So that question would be, how do you get people to take responsibility for themselves and get out of their victimized role?
That can be very difficult, depending on the person, their mentality, what they've been through in life and things like that. Because adopting the victim mentality protects people from the responsibility of life in general. So, say somebody has been, I'll use a working example. This is something that I had a coaching call 5 or 6 days ago, maybe a week, and this particular client separated from their partner 8 years ago, and the position that she is in now financially, when we started working together, she still entirely blamed her ex-partner for her being in, because he left, and he was the main earner, etc. But long backstory, but that's the brief of it. They were together, good standard of life. He left. She obviously moved on the way that she did, and it was one of the hardest things that I've said to her. Not from hard for me to say to her, hard for her to accept. And it was that initially, when it first happened, the position that you found yourself in was his doing. It was his responsibility. His decisions put you in that position, which she was fully willing to accept. Yes, that's true. Said, that stopped being true years ago. And the position that you're in now is entirely your responsibility and entirely your fault. It did not go down well.
Did you word it exactly like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's the thing with me as a coach. I'm very good at what I do, but I'm very honest and I'm very straightforward, because the way I see it is I'm working with adults. I shouldn't have to soften the edges and cushion the blow and very carefully word something so that it's well received, because not every message needs to be well received. Sometimes things that an adult needs to hear that is going to help them change their life needs to be received like a fucking slap in the face. Because it needs to have impact. And if you soften the blow of everything that you say, you remove the impact, the potential impact that can have, which means that the cascade effect of change is going to be reduced. Now, as I said, it wasn't well received. Initially, it was what I expected. As we moved through the session and I explained the reason why, the logical explanation for why I said what I said, it became more and more understood. And by the end of the session, a lot of the victim mentality with regards to that specific facet of her life had been alleviated, had been removed. The mindset had gone from, it's not my fault, therefore it isn't my responsibility, to, it isn't my fault, but it is my responsibility. The first position is a victim, unwilling to help themselves, helpless. The second position is someone that's willing to make changes, that is willing to take charge of the situation. And everything that we do moving forward will be based around that, owning the responsibility for her life as it is right now. Because it gets to a point where the blame can't be held with the other person anymore. And that can be difficult, because accepting the responsibility for a largely negative life that you lead isn't easy, but it's so necessary. So, and again, it's one of those things, it permeates through lots of different facets of life. If somebody has started a business, and maybe you started with a business partner, and then after a while they left, and it took with them their skills, their talent, and it's put you in a worse position. Initially, that isn't your fault, it's their fault. But if 2 years down the line your business is failing and you've still got that same mindset of it's their fault because they left, instead of going, right, well, this is the circumstances that I'm facing now, what can I do to fix this? What can I do to ensure that my life, that my business doesn't spiral, doesn't become more negative, doesn't get worse? What can I do? It's difficult, but It's essential. I wouldn't even say it's important. It's essential for everybody. Whether you're looking at your health, your physical fitness, your physique, your finances, your relationship, everything. The more responsibility that you can own for your circumstances in life, the stronger you become, and the more resilient you become as well.
I know that a lot of people think someone will rescue them at a certain point.
Yeah.
And I think that's just, first and foremost, not a good thing to do, and probably not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. Rescue yourself.
Yeah.
You will respect yourself infinitely more if you take stock of your life as it is right now. For anybody that's listening to this, whatever your circumstances are right now, if you take stock of that, if you sit back and look at your life from a third person perspective, imagine somebody else that you care about has come to you with your circumstances as they are right now. What advice would you give them? Would you tell them to maintain the mentality that you've got with regards to your circumstances as they are right now? Because most people wouldn't. You know, it's like one of my favourite quotes is, we are not victim of our circumstances, we are victim of how we react to our circumstances. Because you can put somebody in an awful situation in life and they would do whatever is necessary to fix it. And you could put somebody else in those exact same circumstances and they would adopt a victim mentality, and you could go back 10 years later and they would be in the same position or worse.
I mean, I guess you can help friends and family out. And I mean, that's ultimately what we do as well. We help people out. But in the beginning, it's usually the other party's first part to actually contact you to get help, or to get out of the situation. So I really liked what you told us about that one. I mean, ultimately, you also have to decide or to see if there are other people or that other person actually wants the help or receives the help well. I mean, I can't really speak for myself since I never had that situation, but I know for a reason that clients come to coaches and actually are asking for help, but then don't really take their advice or their recommendations on or whatever. So do you have that open often, or is that not something that you experience a lot?
I do, and that is one of the reasons why I push responsibility so hard. And I find that it's much more needed on the life coaching side of things, the mentality side of things, than it is on the training. Because I mean, I've still experienced it with, you know, my training clients, and I'm sure you have as well, where you will have somebody that will come to you and they see the fee that they've paid you as a coach is they've paid for results. As if they think that I've paid you for the results, I don't need to do the work, like it's a transaction. And it's like, you're not buying a phone. You know, it's like a coaching relationship is closer to buying something from IKEA. You know, you go to IKEA, so the client comes to us for what they want. They pay for what they want, but then you need to take it home and you need to build it yourself. And we give you the instructions that you need to know how to do it properly.
IKEA also has a build-up service, but that's still a great analogy.
Yeah, but I mean, I've always used that as the analogy because it's not as linear as it seems. Because if you get your flat pack furniture home, and you've got the instruction manual right there for you, and you don't check to make sure that you've got all the nuts and bolts and dowels that you need before you start, you come unstuck. You know, you can end up needing something that you've now not got. So you check to make sure you've got everything that you need, and then you start. And if you follow the instructions perfectly, you will end up with a perfectly constructed piece of furniture. If you follow the instructions initially, and then afterwards go, I'll be all right and I'll do it, it might not be perfect by the time that you get to the end. You know, and that's a big part of coaching. You've got to be willing to do the work. And one of the reasons why within life coaching I focus so intensely on responsibility initially is because trying to help someone that isn't willing to help themselves is a waste of time and money. It really is. And that sounds awful, but somebody that is intent on maintaining the victim mentality but wants their life to change can't come to me or anybody else as a coach and expect their coach to fix their problems, because it just doesn't work like that. But that is something that I've come up against, and I'm sure I will again.
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering because I mean, now from our talk here, and I know from your Instagram videos that you're really straight to the point. And I mean, that could be come to another person as maybe a little bit aggressive, or not really aggressive. Aggressive probably not the wrong word, but like offensive maybe.
Yeah.
So it's basically the truth. So you just basically telling the other person the truth in a relatively, I would say, hammer way. And I used to coach or used to communicate in my coaching service in the past. Sometimes with people, I kind of worded it a little bit less aggressive, so it will be better received at the other end. But nowadays, as I get more and more into more competitors, usually, I mean, it's still an individualized communication process with each client, but it's still more straight to the point and not more honest, because it's always honest, it should be, but it's more like the hammer wording, the hammer that you throw at them, rather than it being in the past. And that doesn't mean that you can't show empathy. And I think that's something that I assume you do a lot as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I think is the easiest way for me to explain how I am to people as a coach, as a person, is I have got unlimited empathy, and that is why I am so driven to find whatever solution will fix the problem. My empathy is the driver for that. I am very solution-based, and I am obsessed with finding the solutions to problems. In fact, so much so, I'm not always the best person to go to if you just want someone to listen, because if you come to me with a problem, I will start giving you solutions. And sometimes some people just want to talk. They just need somebody to listen. If you need somebody to listen, you need somebody that's sympathetic, not empathetic. And that is something that I am not good at. I am not a sympathetic person. I've had people, when I went back when, life was normal and you could actually meet people face to face. I've sat with new clients and they've told me their story and they've been in floods of tears in front of me. And whilst I feel their pain, all that makes me want to do is stop them crying so that we can talk about a solution. To the point where I'll be like, are you done? Can we start talking about how we're going to fix this problem now? Whereas somebody that's sympathetic might share the emotion, might become upset with them, would cater to that need. That isn't what I do. Yeah. And it's like how you said, it's sensitivity of the way that you deliver the information for how it's going to be received by the person. There's things that I've said before that have been deemed offensive or insensitive. Oh, you shouldn't say it like that. I have had clients say it to me before. That's not a nice way to say it. I'm like, yeah, it's true, but life doesn't give a shit. Life doesn't care whether you like the message or not. That's the message that it's going to give you, and you need to accept it so that we can fix it.
Yeah, I mean, as a coach, you should or you have to be super pragmatic about it. You're basically a problem solver, and as you said, I mean, coaching is also a little bit of psychology, or not a little bit, but like a little bit of psychology job. But there's probably a line that you should draw in that regard. At least for my service. I mean, it may be different for you.
The psychology side of things is a more intrinsic part of a lot of what I do, especially from the mentality side of things, because that is, it is essentially what it is. But there is a line where if you soften the edges too much, it loses all ability.
I mean, what I wanted to say basically is that I'm not a clinical a psychologist. And
Yeah,
if you have some serious problems, that's just maybe outside of my scope of practice.
yeah, 100%. And I'm the same. You know,
Yeah.
I've had people come to me before, and we've started to work together. And as soon as it becomes apparent that I'm not able to help them in the way that they need help, then that is when referral becomes, you know, a primary focus. Or if somebody is dealing with an issue that requires that clinical support, I will work with them as a life coach as long as they are still working with that clinician from whatever field it is that they need, so that we can work together.
Yeah.
So I would never have somebody come to me that would leave a therapist or something like that, somebody that is a clinician in their craft, to come and work with me solely. I will work with them, I will work in unison, and I will be part of their support system, but I will not become the whole thing, because there's a lot of things that I just cannot do.
Yeah. And I think that's something that as a coach you just have to be aware of, and knowing your scope of practice.
Yeah, 100%.
I think with the taking responsibility part, I think it's just if you get it, you just start to do, and action will usually lead to results. So I think that's maybe coming back to the self-awareness part. If you really start working on yourself, you will see progress. And I think taking responsibility for yourself is ultimately part of this self-development process for a lot of people, at least. I mean, it's almost at least partly your fault in a lot of situations. I mean, outside of like outer circumstances or really random things that maybe are happening, it's almost at least partly your fault.
Yeah, there is always responsibility for every situation that you find yourself in where there are elements of blame that need to be with you. And the willingness to accept that is a strength that a lot of people avoid, that, you know, a lot of people lack.
Yeah, and I think evaluating if it at what part it was your fault often also leads to experiences in that regard, and then making it better the next time you come around that same problem. So for example, the business partner situation that you mentioned earlier, you mentioned that it isn't your fault that the other person is leaving, but maybe it was your fault, at least partly. So you are actually responsible, at least partly, for that situation. But then, as you said, you have to take on full responsibility for your future without that person.
Yeah. And that, you know, and that is a big part of it. It's one thing that I've found a lot of people feedback when they've started to work on accepting responsibility for the circumstances as they are right now, but also backdating and thinking about situations and circumstances they've experienced previously in life, and accepting whatever responsibility they can find within those situations that is theirs to hold. They've all said that they feel stronger. They feel like a stronger person, because there's something inherently childish about refusing to accept responsibility. Because as a child, if something goes wrong, it's very, very unlikely that it is going to be your fault, because you're a child. Your influence on your life, on the world around you, is minimal because you're a child. But there's a lot of people that never really grow out of that. And I think it's that inherent childishness of a lack of responsibility that maintains that victim mentality that people adopt. And
yeah, I mean, it's just part of adulthood, I guess.
It is, but it's a part of adulthood that a lot of people avoid.
Yeah, I mean, you constantly grew out of your like parents' environment, if that makes sense, as you grow up. Like at some point you're moving out, at some point you are financially completely on your own, and I think that taking responsibility part is or should be at least a part of it too. Yeah, it's funny. My mom stopped doing my my washing my clothes at the age of, I think it was 17 or 16 or something like that. And I was so screwed. I was like, what the fuck am I doing now? And like, I was just refusing to do it. And after 5 days, she just stopped doing it. And she just wasn't continuing to do it. And then after 5 days, I was like, I just don't have anything to wear. So then I started doing it. So I just had to. There was something funny that came to my mind in that situation. And
it's a perfect example, though.
Yeah. I was refusing it. I mean, I was also 16 or 17 or what. I was stupid as you be in that age. But then after a few days, I was just like, okay, so I just have to do something about it. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. But when you gain that realization that, right, me not taking this responsibility is only negatively impacting me.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you got to that point, you were like, right, shit, I need to learn how to do my washing. And then you did it. And you owned the responsibility for those circumstances. And it made you a better person for doing that. You know, that right there is, it seems so minimal, but it's an incredibly valuable lesson that your mum taught you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm super glad that she didn't then started doing it again.
Yeah.
Because if she did, I would probably be in that thought that if I just don't do it, she will do it anyways again. And she didn't, so I had to do it.
Yeah. And that's it. And that's the nature of learning responsibility. Mm-hmm. You know, that's just a perfect working example that can be applied to anything in life.
Yeah. Good. Great. Perfect. So do you have anything to add onto that question?
I don't think so.
So we have, I think you said you had a coaching call at 3, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so let's do the next one and then see if we have the 4th one as well. So how do you learn to genuinely give a fuck about others' opinion on you and your actions, and why is it so important?
It's important, incredibly, incredibly important, because people lose so much life and opportunities from life simply because of the opinions that aren't actually being given, just the potential for an opinion to be given that you don't like. People miss so many opportunities in their careers, in business, in friendships, relationships. You know, there will be lots of people, there'll be people that you and I know personally that have lost the opportunity to be with the person that would be the greatest love that they've ever experienced, because they cared about what other people may have thought about that person that they wanted to be with. Why did they want to be with them? You know, what's great about them? What they might have thought about how they look together. You know, something as insignificant, as somebody else's opinion could stop someone from experiencing the greatest love that they would ever experience. And I reached a point in my life where that thought fucking terrified me. Mm-hmm. That I would potentially get to my later stages in life living a life of what if. What if I'd been with that person? What if I told them? What if I'd just not given a shit about what people thought and I'd just done it anyway? What if I'd gone into that business? What if I'd left that industry and pursued my passion? That's something that I never ever wanted to experience. I never wanted to get to my later years with a laundry list of what ifs, which is essentially just regrets of things that I could have done but didn't do for something as worthless as other people's opinions. And over time, I developed a mentality, and this is my thought process. If I was in a situation and there was a particular person that I was thinking of who might form an opinion of me, this is something that I go through, and I've used this for years and years. If that person died today, would it affect my tomorrow? Mm-hmm. And if the answer is no, their opinion means nothing to me. Mm-hmm. Because if that person could die today and it wouldn't influence the way that my life ran from that day on, then their opinion should have no influence on the way that my life runs anyway. Because as soon as somebody dies, their opinions, their judgments, their thoughts, their feelings, like that, they cease to exist. They cease to have any influence over your life because it isn't there anymore.
Okay. I'm thinking about. So you mean if somebody if your perception of somebody's opinion on you just goes away with them dying, and if it doesn't influence your future, then you should just don't really give a crap.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the thing, there will be people that would miss out on opportunities to, you know, and it could be anything, you know. But I'll use relationships. It's an easy example that everybody can kind of get their head around, because a lot of people that are of, you know, that age will understand and may have experienced. There may be a partner that you have wanted, that somebody that you've wanted to be with, and people will have missed the opportunity to be with that person and experience that love, that happiness, that connection, that intimacy, purely because people that are completely irrelevant to their life may have thought something negative. And that to me, that blows my mind. Because I know through what I do, through coaching, I know there's so many people that have experienced that. And it's not an opportunity, you know, like Dr. Eric Thomas, who I mentioned earlier. One of my favourite quotes of his is, "You need to take the opportunity of a lifetime and the lifetime of the opportunity." So you might get a once in a lifetime opportunity that will be open to you to take for this period of time. And if you don't take it in that window, you'll never ever get it again. And there are people that come into your life that operate in that same way. You will have a brief window of opportunity to take advantage of being able to be with that person. And if you don't in that moment, you'll never get it again. And they could have been that someone special. And people have lost it because somebody might have thought that they weren't good looking enough, that they weren't successful enough, that they weren't tall enough, that they were overweight, whatever bullshit opinion people can form of somebody else. And I know people that have lost that person because of that. And for me, that thought should terrify people.
That's a good one. I mean, I think you just can't be 100% authentic if you let other people's opinion guide your actions. And as you said, it's not even really the opinions. Sometimes it's just what you think they think about you.
Yeah. 100%.
And I mean, what I also I read that a few days ago. I'm not really sure where, but like there are some people that you just simply don't like. And then the vice versa thought is, why should everybody likes you? Yeah, and that's just the way it goes, I think.
One of the biggest issues with judgment and the fear of other people judging you, you care more about what other people think the more you think about other people. So if you spend a lot of your time looking at people and judging them for the way that they dress, or the way they've got the hair, the way they act, just the way they are as a person, or the person that they're dating, the car that they drive, the house that they live in, the clothes that they wear, you know, what they do as a job. If you spend your time judging other people for those things and other things, you will care more about other people judging you. And the reason why is because you know other people will judge you because you spend all of your time doing it. If you judge others less, you will care less and less and less about what other people think of you.
That's a good point.
An easy reference for this is infidelity in a relationship. If you are incredibly insecure in your relationship, that your partner might be messaging somebody else, sending pictures to somebody else, flirting with other people, or being fully engaged physically with somebody else behind your back, the first thing I advise people to do is to stop doing whatever it is that you're doing now that you deem cheating. Because often people that are most insecure about being cheated on are the ones that are being unfaithful to their partner, on whatever level that is, whether it's all the way through to physically being with someone or whether it's messaging other people. But that runs concurrent with judgment. You worry more about other people judging you the more you judge other people.
That's, a really good point. And I mean, I will come back to prep again. For me, for my own experience in prep, it was at the end where I was just so focused on the process and so focused on myself that I just didn't give any flying fuck about anyone else's opinion. And I was like, for example, like doing my posing routine in the locker room in like my chain gym. I was just doing it in the end, and I was just not like, there really was no way I would do that alone in a commercial gym, in a crowded commercial gym before. At that point, I found that like prep just also got me more emotionless. So I wasn't really caring about what anybody else thought about me doing my bodybuilding thing in that moment, in that like not bodybuilding environment, if that makes sense, because it was just a normal gym. I was literally probably the only guy prepping there. It was like a chain gym, like a big commercial gym. And I think that's just interesting because at that point I was so focused on myself, I wasn't really looking around anyway. So as you said, I think at that point I was so detached from others' opinion because I just didn't really look around in that time frame, because I was so concentrated on my own and on my competitions.
Yeah, and that's it. Your self-focus was at an all-time high, and we understand life through our lens, and that's it. So if your lens is constantly focused on you, we kind of automatically begin to believe that everybody else's lens is focused on them. So we care less and less and less about what other people are doing, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what their opinions and judgments might be, because we are not forming those same things for other people. And that's crucial. You know, like for me, I will, there's no such thing as not judging other people. Everybody is going to do it because you just form thoughts, and you know, that happens. Yeah. But how important you feel your opinion is also a huge factor of it. So I might see someone doing something or see some content that someone's posted, their opinion on something, and form an opinion and have a judgment of that. But I also know that my opinion means fuck all. So it's not important. My opinion of somebody else, whether, you know, even if I do form an opinion of a relationship that somebody's got, how they've got into that relationship, the way that that person lives their life, my opinion doesn't mean anything. It isn't important. I am not a special person. And that is another element of why I care so little for what other people think. Because I know that my own opinion is not that important. Neither is anybody else's.
So basically, if you, the advice would be for someone who gives too much about the opinions of others is to first and foremost acknowledge that it doesn't really matter and to focus on yourself.
Yeah, because a lot of the problems that we have come from our sense of self. So if somebody does have an inflated ego, if somebody wants their opinion to be very important to other people, they will care more about the opinions from other people. It's almost like the mirror effect. Whatever you feel is going to be reflected from other people. So if you want your opinion to be very, very important and be cared about by everybody, you're going to care about everybody's opinion. And that's something that I don't. You know, if somebody asks me for my opinion, I will give it. And if they disagree with it, they disagree with it. I'm not going to get bent out of shape because I feel that my opinion is the authority on whatever it is that I'm speaking about.
Oh, that makes sense. Anything to add to that?
A lot of the issues regarding that come from a place of pride. Our ego is a primary driver of a lot of problems that we have. you know, whether it's with regards to insecurities and things like that, because it's that ego of wanting other people to pay attention to you, other people to think good things about you. The more you can release yourself from pride, the more peaceful you will be.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a huge part of people's identity, I suppose, that more often than not needs to be reduced. People with less ego can live free.
But I would assume you don't mean no ego at all.
No.
Okay.
Again, that to try and take anything to an absolute extreme, is always going to cause conflict, because it's like me. I care for the judgment of very, very few people, but I still care about the judgment of some people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that I don't care about anybody's opinion of me. It's just that I care about a select few. You know, I don't perceive myself to have a big ego, but I still have an ego.
Yeah.
I'm still aware of that. I try to not be arrogant, but I know that I'm still arrogant. You know, I'm not an incredibly insecure person, but I still have insecurities. Mm-hmm. I know what my insecurities are. I know where the areas of my life that they impact. I know where they're born from. And I know that the things that I need to do to work on them, but I also know that I am never going to be free of all insecurity. I'm never going to be free of ego. I'm never going to be free of arrogance. It's just the way that it is. But in the same respect, I know that I'm never going to be free entirely from the positive things that people see as personality traits. It's not about complete control. It's just about self-awareness and having that understanding.
Yeah. Cool. If you don't have anything to that, we should probably skip the question for your coaching call, because that's, I mean, if we can do it real quick if you want to.
No, well,
but that's
it's 10 to 2. It's 10 to 2 here. So I've got another hour and 10 minutes before I need to do the call. So I only need 15, 20 minutes before the call. So we've still got time. But one thing that I would add on to what we were just talking about, I know earlier in the call I mentioned about accepting, you know, things as they are.
Yeah.
Again, that is a huge part of becoming self-aware. Mm-hmm. Accepting what you perceive to be the negatives in yourself. You know, a lot of people are insecure, but they don't want to accept that they are because they see it as a weakness. Mm-hmm. The unwillingness to accept parts of yourself, that's the weakness. Having them isn't the weakness. Refusing to accept them is. Because what you accept, you can change. What you don't, you won't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it just comes back to being self-aware and how that helps just creating progress, I guess, in your personality or in your life in general. Yeah,
and that's it. It feeds into itself. It's almost like a closed circuit. In order to become self-aware, you need to accept things about yourself that you previously haven't been. And the more things about yourself you accept, the more self-aware you become. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. And it's one that just gets better and better. Because the more you accept about yourself, the less people can use against you. It's like, perfect example, 8 Mile, Eminem's film. Mm-hmm. At the end, he gives a perfect example of being completely self-aware. The whole thing of that rap battle is the judgment from somebody else about the things about you that most people are ashamed of and unwilling to accept. And he completely reduces the other guy's ability to attack him because he accepts everything about himself. All the negatives, everything that's bad, everything that's good, he accepts it all and he's open about it. He doesn't try to hide it. He's not ashamed of it. He's fully self-aware in that moment. And then when it comes to the other person that's supposed to judge him and break him down because of those things, he's got no fire. He's got no power anymore. That's the key element of self-awareness. Mm-hmm. You accept responsibility for everything that you are and the way that you live, and you remove all the power of judgment from other people.
Yeah, I think that's just something a good word to good sentence, good part to finish that question. So I understood you right that you want to do the fourth question as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got time, so we might as well.
So it's basically how to deal with failures and quote unquote tragedies in life.
Acceptance is a big part of it. I know that is generally part of the process anyway. Like within grief, acceptance is usually the final stage of grief. But just accept that you're gonna fail, regardless of what it is that you do. As a coach, there will be times that we will fail a client. There will be varying degrees of what that failure means, but there's going to be times that you're going to fail a client. If you accept that that is going to happen at some point, it's less likely to happen. Because you will be more diligent in your process, in your service.
I always thought that, like in tragedies, quote unquote, in life, it will probably come to everybody sooner or later, because they're just tragedies that just are naturally to life, like death, for example. And I think just being prepared, and that can come from different places. It can come from things you experienced earlier in your life, or just being aware that even if you don't experience something like that yet, it will probably come at a certain point.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially it. You're right. Accept that at some point it is going to happen. Because it's like when people say they're a perfectionist. I'm a perfectionist. I'm a perfectionist. Bullshit. You're a procrastinator. You're not a perfectionist. It's like Ed Milet. He says that perfection is the lowest standard that you can set for yourself. And that sounds completely counterintuitive. Like, well, no, because perfection's the pinnacle. Perfection is the best that it can be. So how could perfection be the lowest standard? And it's the lowest standard because it's completely unachievable. And most people that set perfection as their standard they want to achieve, they never even start.
Yeah, I guess it cripples them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like what you just said then is absolutely spot on. It cripples them because they know that perfection isn't possible. They know they're not going to be perfect right from the start, especially if you're starting from the start. If you've got no experience with something, if you've got no real skill set in an arena, how could you possibly be perfect right from the start?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can't, and because you can't, but that's the standard that you want to achieve, you don't even start. And that's it. Whereas if you go into something knowing, like, right, I'm starting out, I'm pretty shit at it, I'm just going to work diligently until I become amazing at it. I am going to fail along the way. It's just going to happen. I am going to fail, but I'm not going to quit. That person with that mentality will end up being phenomenal at whatever it is that they've set out to do. Because they'll fail, they'll accept it, they'll learn from it, and they'll move on. Somebody that refuses to fail or wants to be perfect will start something, they'll fail, they'll crumble, they'll quit.
What would be your advice for somebody who has actually recently got through like a rough time, like for example a long-lasting relationship breakup or like a death in life?
Allow it to flow and be what it's going to be, but don't do anything that makes it last longer. And this is probably one of the most important things as well. Allow it to be what it is for you, and don't try to make your grief what you think it should be or what you think other people think it should be. Because there's so many people that will go through something. You might end a long-term relationship and feel oddly at peace after it. You think, I should be really upset right now. I should be experiencing grief. I should be sad. I should be missing this person. I should be feeling X, Y, and Z. And you don't. So some people will then begin a process of trying to create that. They will then become hyper-focused on memories that they had with that person, good times that they shared with them, the way that it felt to be with them, listening to songs that remind them of them, watching films, TV programs, going to places that remind them of that person, to try and create the emotion that they feel they should be experiencing. Whereas what you should do in that situation is just accept that it isn't there and move on.
Mm-hmm.
In the same respect, you will get other people that feel that their grief is lasting longer than it should, because they think other people think that they should be over it by now. That isn't a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes grief can be incredibly, incredibly intense, but very, very short. Other times it can be quite mild, but feel like it lasts for a long, long period of time. And you can get anything else. Any other variation. You can have an incredibly intense grief that lasts for a very long time. Just allow it to be what it is. Accept it. Accept your grief for what it is. And don't do anything that is going to make it worse.
I think it's just, as you said, super individual how people are going to respond to those things. Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, obviously, like, practical advice would be to talk to someone who will actually give you good advice, I would say.
Yeah.
So probably not just go through the friend that is just saying yes to everything you say, but actually someone who can more objectively observe and give you maybe a little bit more of like a not so much biased opinion or recommendation.
Yeah, like if you were speaking to somebody and they adopted the approach that I do with it, where I said, allow your grief to be what it is. Mm-hmm. Like allow it to play out the way that it is. And when you've received that advice, the person that you're speaking to then says, yeah, you're right, I'm going to go to the lookout point that we used to go to after we'd been on a date, and I'm just going to sit up there and listen to songs that remind me of her. I would then go, no, that's the exact opposite of what I've just said. That is you then going to a specific spot that reminds you of that person, listening to music that remind you of that person, that is going to make you feel worse. That is going to perpetuate, it's going to make it worse. Don't do that. Continue with life, but allow yourself to continue living whilst you grieve. Mm-hmm. Don't stop living and change your daily routine to focus on the grief.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately getting through those phases will make you or prepare you for your future in general. And it's something that I actually reposted that from your Instagram, was that sometimes life that is not going to be or not going to plan can be the best thing that ever happened to you in terms of your future that then creates out of that situation.
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. Like, somebody may have just broken up with a partner that they've been with for a long time, and in this moment feels absolutely awful. You go through the myriad of emotions that can cause. But even in as a matter of a few weeks, somebody else might come into your life that if you were still in that relationship, you would have missed. You would have either not been in the physical place, where you met that person that then became your partner that then you were with forever, or you may have met them, but because you were in a relationship, nothing ever became of it. So it could be something that is awful, an awful experience to go through, like heartbreak, can end up being the best thing that ever happened to you because of what comes following it.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say about things that just, for example, a breakup can be really, really bad, but something like an accident or something, where you lose someone you love. I would say probably just objectively that's something that is more, that is just harder. You probably get what I wanted to say. How are you recommending people to deal with those type of things?
It's difficult because the immediacy and the unexpectedness of the loss is what makes that so difficult. Because it could be somebody that you expected to be there forever. Say if it was a brother or a sister, a family member, somebody that you never really think of in the context of them not being there anymore. Mm-hmm. And they die in an accident. 1 minute, your mindset, your life, your vision of your future, all the way as far as you can see into your future, that person is present throughout it all. And then all of a sudden, they're not. So the level of grief that you experience through a sudden death like that can hit you so much harder, because you need to not only accept what has happened in the moment, but your whole vision of your future can change. And that is something that's incredibly difficult. Some people can adapt to that quite well. Other people can struggle to adapt to that for years and years to come. And, I think that's part of what I said before with regards to allow your grief to be what it is. Because you'll get some people, like an example would be if a grandparent was coming to the end of their life. When your grandparent eventually does pass away, there can be an expectation of how you should react to it.
Yeah.
Within your family, it could be that your family expects you to be broken and be incredibly, incredibly upset for a long time. But your perspective of it is that your grandparent that you loved was suffering a lot as they were coming to the end of their life. And you actually find peace in the fact that they are now at peace. So the grief that you experience is very short-lived. And that to somebody else may make you appear insensitive. But it isn't that at all. It's just that your perspective, the way that you've accepted and dealt with that situation, is different than the way that other people do. And there's nothing wrong with that.
And you were also much more prepared than in the other situation. Yeah. That's a really good point.
I mean, with regards to coming back to the accident side of things, that is something that it's difficult to help somebody through because of the suddenness of it. That's a very individual process to help someone through.
Yeah.
Because you need to understand the person, you need to understand the relationship that they had with that person, how much of an integral part of their future they either thought they were going to be or wanted them to be. Because if it's a sibling that has passed away, your future projection of that person's place in your life could have not only included them being part of your wedding and them being the uncle or auntie to your children, but also them making you an auntie or an uncle, them having children that would then become an integral part of your family and a very important part of your family. And you can almost grieve the loss of those nieces and nephews that you haven't actually had, but because you were so certain that you were going to have them, you feel that loss. That's why it can be so difficult for people.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I guess in a coaching setting, sometimes if you do it for long enough, you just have to deal with those type of things. Maybe not an accident, at least not on a frequent basis, but like things like losses that are just normal or like quote unquote more normal in life, like a breakup or like a death of a family member that was at an old age or something like that. And I experienced that quite sometimes right now at that point. And I think as a coach, you just have to be there. I mean, obviously there's the line as we talked about on the psychology side, but you still have to have an open ear, I guess. And that's something that I always want to know my clients, that they can tell me about that. Although it may not be super integral for the coaching process. Also, although I would say that most of the time it is, because it's just affecting everything else from like a bodybuilding perspective. If somebody dies or if you have a breakup, that will probably influence your bodybuilding process at a certain stage as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right with that, because one of the more important things or beneficial things that we could do as a coach for our clients, if they have experienced that, even if we can't be there for them psychologically in the way that they may need because of the limits to our scope of skills, one thing that we can do is in that moment when it is most intense, once we are made aware of it, we reduce the expectations that we have of them in that moment. So if they need to take a little bit of time off the gym, we honor that. We say, if you need to take a few days off the gym a week, take it. If the plan that you're following at the moment, the schedule that you've got, what time you need to get up in the morning, etc., things like that, if that is a hindrance for that person, then adjust it. I'm not saying that we let them abandon routine, because that would be a negative. That would be a big negative. But make considerations, make adjustments to the routine, just to make that moment that little bit easier for them. And that, in our role as a coach, can be something that is vital to where that they react in the immediacy of whatever it is that they're dealing with. And it can simply be that us releasing them from the expectation of ticking all of the boxes all the time can give them just a little bit of breathing space, that then within a day or two, less than a week, they're then ready to get back on track. Yeah. Whereas if that was maintained, it could extend the stress that they feel and take them longer to then get back on track.
That's a good point. So, did you have anything to add on to that question? Otherwise, I would probably just cap it here.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Do you have anything to, or where can people find you and your stuff, your content?
The main thing is Instagram at the moment. I'm in the process of setting something else up with a good friend, Sophia, which will be another avenue for people to contact me and get more content from me and things like that. But that's still in development stages. That's not available at the moment. But once it is, I'll be making that present on my social media. We're calling it the Mindset Academy, and it's a very specific coaching platform for purely just the mindset side of things. So Instagram, ARKNutrition, is the main place to find me.
Cool. I will link that in the description. And then, thanks, Andy, for coming on. And it was a pleasure.
My pleasure.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was.
Cool. Have a good day, man.
You too. Take care.